evening to all. Today I am Anushka Gupta from Lawyered, and I'd like to welcome all of you to our another session of Ask My Mentor R on the topic from initiation to disposal, the life cycle of civil suit. Today we have got advocate Monica Tyagi present with us. She's an advocate with more than 8 years of experience in civil, commercial, and corporate laws. The practice areas also include area contracts and legal documentation, business and company registration, and more. Ma'am, it's an honor to have you here today with us at Lawyered.
Thank you so
I hope I'm
much.
audible. So before starting, I have few points for the audience. Please keep yourself on mute during the presentation so that we could avoid any disturbances. Then we have questions. If you have any questions regarding the topic, then please mention them in the chat box. Thirdly, there will be attendance form that will be shared with you. So please fill that in order to get your attendance marked. Now, I would like Monica ma'am to please take over the screen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anushka, and thank you everybody for joining in and being there with me on board. So I have chosen this particular topic of CPC because of one very basic reason that whenever, I meet my colleagues and as well as the clients, at times, we know everybody that we have certain rights, civil rights, but whenever we have to enforce them, then what is the procedure and how it is to be done and how they are done in law. For that, it gets difficult for me to at times inform the clients that how it is to be done and everything. So this is one of the basic reasons I wanted to do this webinar and make myself available to the people at large, that how, and so that I can also answer those questions, like whenever we are in the court, how are things are being done in a particular suit or in a particular dispute which is of a civil nature. So before I start, I think I'm audible. If it's someone can just confirm it to me, Anushka or
Yes,
Diksha.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You are perfectly audible, ma'am.
All right. So we are today on the topic of Code of Civil Procedure. Now, law is divided into two aspects. One is called the procedural law. The other one is called the substantive law. Now, what is substantive law? Substantive law is our rights and liabilities in law. Rights and liabilities would be that we are entitled to something, and and the other one is the procedural law. Then the procedural law is something, then what is the procedure, how do we enforce that, that is called the procedural law. Now today we are on the procedural aspect. Procedural aspects, they, in common parlance, they do not give us any right, they just tell us how can we enforce that right and in what manner. So um, so let's start with that, which is the procedural law we are talking about. I'll give you an example of substantive law. Substantive laws are usually you find in IPC, or Indian Contract Act or Transfer of Property Act. Those are the rights. They just tell you that you are entitled to this one particular thing, or you have a right in law to do this particular act. But how do we enforce that right is done through a procedural law, which is CPC, which is called Code of Civil Procedure 1908. Now, this particular code has undergone so many amendments. Someone once happened in 1976, then happened in 2002. Then these are the, let's not go into those things, and let's just basically start with it. uh, can I have this? Okay, I do have the slides on my screen. The first one is, now what is a suit? Usually we all must have heard that my suit is pending in court, or my particular dispute is pending in court. Now, so the word suit is not defined anywhere as such in the court, in the civil procedure code. However, it means that presentation of a particular plaint. Now, what is a plaint? Plaint includes my case, like what I want court to know and how I want to present whatever it is, that what is my case and everything. I put it in my pleading. So that is called a plaint, and that presentation of plaint is called a suit. Can I have the next slide? Yeah. So which now suit is also defined at many places, one being the Black's Law Dictionary and everything. CPC has total 154 sections, and there are total almost somewhere 50. Just a sec. Yeah. There are total 154 sections, and there are almost 54 orders in CPC. CPC is a very vast subject. Like, it is very difficult to cover everything in like half an hour. It is a very, very, very wide subject. In fact, one particular order has so many rules. But everything in I will go into each, not, I'll not touch everything, but we'll go into like very brief aspects, like what are the essentials of CPC. So these are one few of the relevant provisions, being Section 9, Section 20. Section 9 talks about on my screen is little can. Right. So yeah, can I have the next slide? Now, what are the basic requirements of filing a suit? The first one is to determine the place of suing. The other one being compliance with the essentials of suit. Third one being frame of suit, and the fourth one being institution of suit. We are dealing with all four contours one by one. The first one being the first one being place of suing. Now, usually when we go to the court and there is a particular thing we want court to know. Now, place of suing would be, why am I not? Just a sec.
Is there any issue, ma'am, from...
Yeah, there's some problem with my video, and there's some problem with the screen.
What exactly is the problem faced by you, ma'am?
Can you see me?
Yes, ma'am. We can see you. There is no issue. Are you able to see the presentation, ma'am?
Actually, there's some problem with the screen. Just give me 2 minutes. I'll just solve it. Yeah. Right. Now, we usually, whenever we go to the court, we want court to, you must have heard of many disputes that A and B have a particular dispute with respect to a property. One may claim a right over a property, the other one may dispute it, saying that you are not the owner of the property, or you have to, or there are recovery suits where I say that, okay, you owe me one per XYZ amount, the other one disputes it, no, I don't owe you any amount. So we go to the court and apprise them of the facts that, okay, this is the situation and this is how I want to enforce my right. Now, how will we do it? Who will decide that which court should be chosen? Now, the question is that it is never, usually whenever we go to the court of the lowest grade has the jurisdiction. Now, jurisdiction is divided into almost three points. One is the pecuniary jurisdiction, the other one is being subject matter jurisdiction, and the third one being territorial jurisdiction. Now, all these three things are pecuniary jurisdiction is like defines the of what amount the dispute would of what particular amount it would decides the one particular amount, and then to that court we file the case. The other one being the territorial jurisdiction is again which court will have the jurisdiction, court in Delhi or court outside Delhi, which court will have the jurisdiction. Then the third thing is the subject matter jurisdiction. Now, the subject matter jurisdiction is which particular court can decide this particular issue. Not every court can decide any issue. We cannot go to any court and say, okay, here my dispute. We can't do that. That is prescribed in law, and we all have to follow that procedure before we file any kind of litigation. Now, suits are of what kinds? One is called, there can be many suits. The suits can be of recovery. There can be a suit for recovery where monetary issues are involved. We owe certain debts and everything. Then there's a partition suit. Partition suits are basically when there is, disputes between the family with respect to particular portions. The third one being mortgage suits, where you mortgage certain kind of your assets and everything. Then who will decide where these suits should be filed? Then usually, as I mentioned, the courts of the lowest grade, like in Delhi we have district courts where Tees Hazari, Patiala House, Saket, Dwarka, Rohini, these all are called district courts, which are divided as per a particular district and the areas falling under them. Then another is called the subject matter dispute, where the subject matter situates if it, because usually CPC deals with the immovable property. In immovable properties, issue with respect to immovable property is filed where the property situates. For example, the dispute is of a Delhi property, then the Delhi court will have jurisdiction. If the dispute is of Bombay property, the dispute will lie in Bombay High Court, not High Court, maybe a district court or anywhere. Or for that example, let's say Kolkata. So if a property is in Delhi, I cannot file my suit in Bombay. Similarly, if any property is in Bombay, I cannot file it in Delhi. Then we come to the next aspect, which is called the essentials of a suit. Now, what are the essentials of a suit? One is called the usually whenever we file our dispute before the court, we need to have an opposing party. An opposing party is termed as defendant. Now, who's a defendant? There's a plaintiff, there's a defendant. Plaintiff is the one who goes to the court and addresses or prays for one particular relief, that I am entitled to so and so thing. Then the other side, which is called the opposing party, is called the defendant in the suit. Now, defendant is the one against whom we file our claim, or against whom we pray for a relief. Then comes subject matter in a dispute. Now, what is a subject matter in a dispute is usually whether it's a dispute with respect to the family, which is called a partition suit, or with respect to a recovery, or with respect to any sort of title that I'm entitled to be in the possession of a particular suit property, but I have been dispossessed. These are just the basic subject matter in a that we put it in our plaint. Now, plaint is the place, like I mentioned, is where I write everything, which is called my pleading, where I have to plead everything. Why am I before the court, and what relief I'm asking from the court. Then the third thing comes the cause of action. The cause of action means that what has happened, what is that one particular cause, which has uh, which is one of the reasons I'm before the court. Like, the cause of action has to be, the court should be aware of what is the cause of action and why you are before the court. You just cannot randomly visit the court for any kind of relief. Now, the fourth contour is the relief. Now, relief is something what we pray before the court. Prayer could be that, let's say, this particular property belongs to 4 brothers, please partition it into 4 parts, or maybe, let's say, 1/4 share, which is called the relief. Now, for every relief that we claim from the court, we have to pay a particular court fee. Now, court fee is what? Why we pay the court fee is like, whenever you are asking for something, you're asking some service of the court, for which you have to pay some amount of fee, which is mentioned in Court Fees Act, or which is like governed by that. Can I have the next slide? Then let's start with the orders. Now, orders are basically these orders are the one which are the governing force of CPC. They tell you that how you go and file a suit before the court. You file a pleading, you draft a pleading, and then you go before the court, how it is filed and what all should be mentioned in your plaint before it is instituted as a suit by the court. Then, or like, first one being order 2, which deals with framing of the suit. Now, what is framing of the suit? Now, order 2 has further rules defined, like it says that your suit should include everything, that whatever you want, it should be mentioned in one go. It should not be like you ask for part thing right now in particular to a subject dispute, and then you ask something else late at a later stage. The reason being, whatever you have to seek from the court with respect to a issue, that a issue should be presented to the court in one go. It should not come like after 10 days again you go before the court and ask for the same relief. You cannot do that. Therefore the court says that every suit must include the whole of the plaintiff claim in respect of the cause of action, and as far as practicable all the matters in dispute between the parties be disposed of finally. The purpose is to actually not let the defendant be vexed twice for the same cause of action. Reason being, a person should not be asked to come to the court again and again for one particular issue. It should be disposed of in one go, and therefore the court demands that whatever you have to ask from the a party, you have to ask it in one go. You can't part it. Next slide, please. Now, what are the procedures that are to be followed while filing a suit? Now, just a sec, please. I'll just open my... Can I have the next slide? Yeah. So what are the procedures that we follow in filing of a suit? The first one is when we institute a suit. First one is institution of a suit. You file your pleadings, the suit is instituted. Then comes whenever a suit is filed, it's first. Can I have this? Yeah. Right. First, I will give a very brief that what are all is needed for filing a suit. First one is called institution of a suit. Now, what is institution of a suit? Whenever we present a plaint to the court, the first hearing takes place, and we apprise of the court with the basic facts that are mentioned in my pleading. Then the court issues summons to the other side, which is called the defendant. Then third call is called the appearance of the defendant. After receipt of those summons, the defendant comes before the court. Then the fourth stage comes wherever he files his pleading. Now, when you file your plaint, he has to respond to that particular pleading that you have mentioned. That is done in the mode called written statement. Now, written statement includes the defense of the defendant, whether he why he is not agreeing to what you have stated in your plaint, and what is his defense, why court should not grant the relief that has been prayed by the plaintiff. That is written in a written statement. Then comes the stage of then comes another stage, which is called framing of issues. After looking at the plaint and the defense of the parties, then there is another stage which is called replication. At times parties feel that something new has been, or something has been written in the written statement, and I need to clarify it, or I need to put some another fact which is which the plaintiff feels has been which should be covered and which has not been covered in the plaint. That is done through a mode called replication. That is another pleading of the plaintiff. Then comes the stage of framing of issues. Now, before framing of issues, there's another stage, like at times parties file applications of seeking stay from the court, that before the suit is particularly disposed of, this my application be, usually this happens that whenever we present the plaint on the first date of hearing, we request the court to even grant a stay on one particular issues before the this suit is disposed of by the court finally, so that in between the subject matter of that particular proceeding is secured by the court and nothing happens during that period. Then comes framing of issues. Now, what is framing of issues? After looking at the pleadings of both the sides. Now, what pleading includes your plaint, your written statement, and your application. So after looking all these three things, the court frames the issues, like what are the real issues involved between the parties? What is the issue which the plaintiff is raising, and what is the issue which the defendant is raising? The court frames those issues for the further consideration. Then we file our evidence. Now, what is evidence? Evidence includes the documents that we put on record, all the supporting documents or our stance that we take before the court so that we get a particular relief in our favor. That is called the evidence. Now, evidence is always given an oath before the court that whatever I'm stating in my pleading or the documents that I'm filing are not it's I'm not playing any kind of fraud on the court. Now that is called being filed on oath. Now, the fourth stage, the next stage comes, which is called the cross examination. Once the evidence is filed, now evidence is always filed by both the parties. The plaintiffs, the one party plaintiff could be many. There could be one plaintiff also. There could be many plaintiffs. Similarly, many defendants. It depends on the number of people against whom we have a particular claim. So all the parties, they file their evidence, and then we proceed with the aspect called cross examination. Now, after looking into the evidence, we put before each party that whatever you have stated in your plaint and whatever has been said by you, or the document that has been presented by you, is not a fabricated thing or is not untrue. How will court get to know? That is called cross examination. Now, cross examination is takes place either before the court through appointed, maybe a local commissioner who would sit with you and do that for you people, and you will put the lawyer of one particular party will raise questions to the other party that whatever you have stated in your plaint is true or not, is done through presentation of putting those documents that you have filed and prove the document that whatever the document is true in nature and is not merely a piece of paper. Then the next stage is final hearing. Now, what is final hearing? Final hearing is after looking into all the pleadings that you have filed, all the documents that you have filed, and all the evidence that you have given before the court, whether true or not true, is examined by the court after looking into the nature of the cross examination that you have given. Then you finally argue it before the court, saying that the particular fact, for example, A puts a question to B that whether this document is true or not, and somewhere in the while proving that document there's a loophole or something, and you're not able to prove that document, you finally argue it out before the court, pointing out those issues. Then on the basis of those arguments, then comes the judgment. Now, what is a judgment? Judgment is the final adjudication by the court. The court finally decides that whatever in their deemed opinion, on the basis of the evidence led by the parties and on the basis of the pleadings and the documents filed by the parties, the court comes to a plausible or a reasonable or a view that according to them, who is entitled to the relief, whether the plaintiff who has come before the court for one particular relief is entitled to the same or not. And for this, they also look into the defense and the evidence of defendants as well, and then accordingly pass a judgment. Then after, can I have the next slide?
Diksha, can we have the next slide?
Okay, anyway, I'll use it from my... Okay. Then usually after passing of the judgment, what are we satisfied with what the court has decided? Are we satisfied that the evidence led by the parties or the documents or my pleadings, have they been appreciated by the court or not? Who will decide that? Now, once the court gives a judgment, there are at times it happens that we are not satisfied what the court has done, or we are not satisfied that despite our presentation of the documents and despite our presentation of the evidence and despite the pleadings, the court has somewhere ignored or somewhere the court has not appreciated the facts that have been put either by it by the plaintiff or the defendant. So the parties usually decide to appeal against the said things. Now when the parties, now what is appeal? Appeal is usually when we are not satisfied with the judgment of or an order of a court, and then we go before a higher court disputing that the findings given by the court in that particular judgment. Now the after that where now the provisions in relation to the appeals and everything is provided in the code of civil procedure itself, and there are certain provisions which start from section 96, they go up to section 110, which talks about that what orders can be appealed and what orders or judgments can be appealed or what orders cannot be appealed. That is provided in the court itself, and it's also provide for the time period within which you have to approach the court for filing of these judgment, for filing of the appeal against these judgments. Then there is a stage. Now this is appeal or review. Now there are three things. Yeah, before I go ahead, there are three things that usually can be done in if we are not satisfied with the judgment. Either we file an appeal or we file a review or we file a revision. Now appeal, I have explained, is usually when you're not satisfied that the court has ignored for a particular aspect or has not appreciated the defense put up by either of the party, so we file an appeal. Then comes a review. Now what is review? Review is basically that, all right, the judgment is, we are okay with the judgment, there's no problem in the judgment itself, but there's a one particular issue that it should be reviewed, and it has to go before the same court. It does not go to the appeal court, because there we are not really disputing the facts or the findings of the court. We are just saying that one particular issue is to be a kind of clarification be given on a one particular issue. So we go before the same court itself. We do not go to a higher court. Review is done by the same court who has passed the judgment. Then comes revision. Now revision is a process where we do not have a remedy to file appeal. Not all orders or judgments orders are appealable. At times, for reason being, they do usually an appeal lies when my right is being infringed. Then I appeal to the court. However, when there is no infringement to my right, then we go for the those certain orders, not those orders not are not appealable. In those situations, we file a revision. Now revision is also provided under CPC itself, and that is we invoke the jurisdiction of the court seeking review of the court. Just a sec, please. Then there is something called execution of decree. Now before this, I have explained what appeal, revisions and review are. Now there is something called execution of a decree. Now what is the execution of a decree? Now before I go into that question, I need to inform you about what is called a decree. Now decree is a stage that is followed by passing of a judgment. Now once a judgment comes, that the next step is to is like court passes a decree. Whatever the judgment has been passed, that is affirmed by the court in the form of a decree. Now that decree is once a decree comes into my hand, I have a right, whether it's the plaintiff or the defendant, to go for the execution of the same. Whatever if the court decides, I have a right to go before the court and seek the execution of that particular decree. In this stage, decree holder complain. Now, who's a decree holder? Decree holder is someone in whose favor a decree has been passed. He compels the judgment debtor. Now, judgment debtor is a person against whom that judgment has been passed, be it the defendant, be it the plaintiff, to we really seek the enforcement of that one particular judgment or the decree that has been passed by the court, and through which really it's actually a mode by which a decree holder recovers the fruits of the judgment. Then once that execution once the execution is filed, the executing court, the court who will be executing the decree, will again pass an order where the finally whatever has been decided or whatever has been granted to us in the judgment or that one particular decree, the court will pass an order saying that please enforce, or we please ensure that whatever that one particular party is entitled to, please that is given to that one particular party, and or is being awarded to that one particular person. Yes. And I think, yes, so these are the basic contours, and like I told you, CPC is a very vast thing and nothing can be covered in just 30 minutes. So whatever the basics I could explain, I have done that, and if there are any questions or answers from the parties, that may be put to me.
Well, thank you, ma'am, for giving us such important, like educating us like what are the important terms in this CPC and giving us insights. So now we have questions coming in, and our question is from Aditya Jha, who asked, ma'am, what is the best way to learn and understand vast subject like
You're not
CPC
audible. Can you be a
different?
little, sorry?
Yeah, am I audible to you now?
Yeah, you're audible now.
Yeah, so we have a question coming from Aditya Jha, who asks, what is the best way to learn and understand vast subjects like CPC, and what is the difference between order, decree, and judgment?
What is the difference between?
Order, decree, and judgment.
Okay. So Aditya, thank you for the question. So there's no, what is the, he wants to know what is the fastest way.
So he
What?
basically wants to know that how can he understand a subject
A
which is
subject like
vast as
CPC.
CPC?
So basically CPs is a it's a procedural law, and it can be understood only with practice. It is not something that you can say that you can gulp down just in one go. Whenever once you are done with your when, like, as a student, when I was a student, even for me, understanding CPC was not a very easy thing. When you go before the court and you really get into the practice with time and with procedure, you understand it. And of course but yes, there are basic things that are there in the CPC, like how a plaint should be filed, and what are the, like I have mentioned, what are the stages of one particular suit. So that is the only way that comes with practice and understanding once you enter the court.
Thank you, ma'am. I hope that answers your question, Aditya. Now we have our question coming from Dishu Mahajan. She
Right.
asked, ma'am, what is the difference between issue and cause of action in the CPC?
Issue and
Cause of
cause of
action
action.
in the CPC. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Now, issue is something, issue is in, like, we commonly understand what is the issue. Like, issue is actually the dispute between the parties. When parties are actually something which is which requires the court's interference, which requires an adjudication by the court, that is called an issue between the parties. And which is like, for one particular fact is mentioned by me, but the other one party disputes it. They say that we do not agree to what that person is saying. So for this, we need the court's adjudication and decide what the real fact is. That is called issue. Now, what is cause of action? Cause of action is what is that one particular thing that has forced me, or that has actually that gives me a right that I should go before the court and seek for a particular relief. That is called the cause of action. What is that event that has taken place which requires court's interference in deciding one particular issue.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Now, another question is like, what happens if a defendant is not able to appear in the court after multiple summons? In that case, how does the court actions on it?
Usually when parties, despite being given certain summons and despite repeated summons or despite repeated say we can say opportunities, despite that he's not been appearing before the court usually takes a note of that fact and is that is usually taken as, just a sec please, yeah, the court usually proceeds ex parte against you. Ex parte means that it is taken against the defendants that he has no defense or one particular issue, and will take it against you and will proceed ex parte. And now ex parte is a situation where the plaintiff does not, is given an order or one particular judgment despite the whether the defendant is not coming before the court or not, because court is usually works on the principle of natural justice, that all the parties be given a right to hear. And if the other side is not coming before the court will not wait and will proceed ex parte, taking it against the defendant, and will eventually pass it in favor of the plaintiff.
Okay, now we have another question coming from Prasenjit Mitra, who asks, what are the requirements for making a will, and what does the will must contain to remove discrepancies in future?
What are the
I'll repeat again. What are the requirements for making an will, and what does a will must contain to remove discrepancies in future?
discrepancies in? Now will is a very different subject, that is not the that's not the purpose of the webinar today. But still, how will is to be formulated and everything, that depends. That if for writing a will, for giving a right to another something in my estate or my assets, I need to be the owner of those things. I cannot give it to anyone if I'm not an owner of one particular thing. So whatever I mention it in a will, I should be the owner or should have a right to pass on it to someone else.
Okay, so ma'am, when a summon is passed, in
Hmm.
that case, what are the procedure that need to be laid down by the court? Like who will go and give summons to the party if the party is not accepting the summons multiple
Hmm.
times, and what are the actions that the court can take for the same?
Court, that, as I mentioned earlier, the court usually proceeds ex parte. They will not. They will either they will take it against the party who's not appearing despite issuance of summons, and will proceed the ex parte and dispose of the suit accordingly without waiting for the defense of the other side. And that is usually that decides that the defendant or the party who's not appearing has no defense, or has no defense or has no say to be presented. And it is usually when, and that one particular if the party goes in appeal or something like that, they cannot challenge it because they did not appear, they did not put it any defense or something like that.
Okay. The next question is from Vanna Gupta, who asks, is dismissal of suit a decree?
Is dismissal
Dismissal of suit a decree?
uh, dismissal of one particular suit a decree? Yes, why not? If the suit has been dismissed and the court is of the opinion that it does not require further adjudication, or dismissal of suit includes that the relief claimed by the plaintiff or something, or the plaintiff is not entitled to that one particular relief, therefore the dismissal takes place, and therefore it partakes the character of a judgment, and the judgment is further given into a decree. Yes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Now we have another question which asks, what is
I
the
will
difference
request that
between...
the question I will be able to take only one or two more questions, and if that is possible.
Sure, sure, ma'am.
Yeah.
So the question is, what can the plaint be? When can the plaint be present?
When can the plaint be
Be present.
presented before the court?
Yes,
It
ma'am.
should be presented as and when I have a cause. Whenever I'm aggrieved by something and I need court's interference, then I should go and file my plaint before the court. That is when the plaint is presented.
So, ma'am, is there any limitation until when can a suit can be filed,
No,
or
there
with...
is, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Now, what is the limitation? Limitation is usually where the court has the law prescribed that before you seek enforcement of any right, before you seek enforcement of any right, that should be done in a time bound manner. You cannot come before the court as whenever you want. That is, the court prescribes a time bound manner, and every suit has its own limitation. Like, you cannot enforce for every kind of suit you have a one particular kind of limitation which is prescribed in law. Every suit has a different kind of limitation.
Okay, ma'am. So we have a second last question again from Aditya Jha, who asked an example of cases which are not available for appeal. So could you just give us some examples which are not available for appeal?
Which are not available for
Available for appeal. Appeal
appeal.
in the court. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now I'll give you an example that whenever we file a plaint, there is a provision in CPC which is called Order 7 Rule 11. We seek rejection of the plaint. Now, what is rejection of the plaint? That the plaint does not disclose any cause of action, or the plaint is barred in law in for some particular reason, and therefore the plaintiff is not entitled to any relief. That is a stage right after filing of the plaint itself. For that, you may not file your written statement also, and you simply file an application seeking rejection of the plaint. Now, when I file that particular application and its court is of the opinion that this application does not require any adjudication, or as per court, that application is frivolous and it does not require court's interference, the court rejects the application. Now, mere rejection of that particular application will not give me a right to appeal, because here my right has not been affected. I still have a right to go file my written statement and give my defense. But if the plaint is rejected, if the court, after looking into my application of Order 7 Rule 11, comes to a conclusion, yes, the plaint does not have any cause of action or is barred in law for whatever reasons mentioned in Order 7 Rule 11, the court rejects the plaint. In that situation, the right of the plaintiff gets affected. That effect, the right which has been affected, gives me a right to further appeal. So that is a right to appeal that had been bestowed on me. However, mere rejection of my application will not give me a right, because I still have a right to file a written statement. So this is the basic difference between what order, which order would be like rejection of just an application is not an appealable order.
Okay, Monica ma'am, we have the next question from Prasanjeet Mitra.
Hmm?
Does arbitration clause can be added in an will for future settlements?
An arbitration clause be added
Does arbitration clause can be added in an will for future settlements in a will?
in a will?
Yeah,
No, that
future
cannot be
settlements.
the situation. That's basically totally different concept, because will comes into force only after the death of the person who has written it. It has no force during the lifetime of one of the person who has formulated that one particular will. So adding an I'm sorry, the question is not clear to me. Arbitration clause of the disputes between the parties, or what?
Ma'am,
I don't understand.
I'll repeat the question. Does
No,
arbitration clause, yeah, sure,
arbitration clause in a will.
added in a will for future settlements?
I'll request Mr. Prosenjit. Is that Mr. Prosenjit?
Yeah, Prasanjeet, yeah.
Yeah, Prasenjit. I'll request Mr. Prasenjit to reformulate the question, because the will comes
Okay,
into force only after the death of the person who has written it. So
yeah.
how will he
So,
arbitrate in the future once he's no
yeah.
more alive?
Prasanjeet, I request you, if your question is not clear to our speaker, to kindly either unmute yourself or rephrase or restructure your question and write it in the chat box. The next question we have is from Mumta. Could you please tell me about revision bit clearly?
So revision is usually when uh, s- uh, like I told you that certain orders are appealable. Now, orders which are not appealable, like I gave an example just now, if you have just heard about, if you were online while I was answering the previous question.
Yeah.
Now, what is revision is like when my application of Order 7 Rule 11 is rejected by a
Yeah.
lower court.
Yeah.
I appeal it before the higher court, saying that this application warrants court's interference, because either because the judge has not decided the application well, it is not really it is not my right to seek
Yeah.
court's interference, but I request court that my application should not have been rejected because of xyz, because of the reason the court has not looked into this one particular fact, or the court did not have jurisdiction to decide this application, or something like that. So
Okay.
those orders, such kind of orders, are revision falls under the revisional jurisdiction of the court.
Okay. The next question we have is from Akshaya. Under what circumstances is a review filed? Sorry.
So when the court mentions something in a judgment which is not clear, whether it's not clear, or it's unambiguous, or it's ambiguous because of some reason, that you feel that we should go back to the court and seek clarification, that you gave one particular submission and it has not been recorded for some reason, so the court gave some finding but is not clear, like what really court is answering, or what court is really giving a finding. Instead of appeal, we go before the same court and request the court to clarify that one particular fact. So that is called review. In
Okay.
review, you're not seeking any reversal of the judgment or the finding. You are just simply seeking clarification on one particular finding that has been given by the court, to elaborate what they are trying to say. That's all.
Bob, I would like to ask one question. This is Babta.
Yeah.
So the review can be asked only in the same court which gave the judgment, and revision
Yes.
can be asked in the higher court.
Yes, so revisional jurisdiction is with the high court. For example, the district court, or some lower court has not given a finding which is not which I feel was, which we feel that we should not have been decided like that. Then we go before the revision court. Yes, review court is the one who has passed the judgment. They will just clarify that whatever I decided is this is the basic crux of the judgment, and this one particular fact is not clear to me. Please clarify. That is called review. We
Yeah,
go
okay,
before the
thank you,
same
Bob.
court. We don't go to the higher court.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Bob.
Okay.
Yes,
The
that's
next,
all.
yeah.
Yeah,
The next
I can't hear. Chandrika, I can't hear.
Um, I'm so sorry. There must be some technical problem at your hand. I would request all the participants to please fill the form. There's a form that has been present in the chat. So to just get marked for attendance, you need to fill the form. So yes, ma'am. Thank you very much for coming over here. This session, I must say, was very interesting and engrossing.
Thank
And
you,
we are
Purva. Thank you for having me with all of you, and I hope I could give a little insight into CPC.
sure, ma'am. It was our honor
Thank
to
you.
have you here. There's a small announcement again that for the participants, the certificates for yesterday's and today's webinar will be passed on to you in the coming week because we have a software upgradation. So please be understanding. Thank you very much. And with this, I would like to end the webinar.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you, Anushka. Is Monica ma'am there with us?
No, actually, she had to go in urgency, so she has just
Oh.
left the group now.
Okay. Okay. No worries. I hope everyone has marked their attendance. So attendance form helps you in two ways. First, it helps you in marking your presence, and second, for the certificate. Um, for certificate, I would like to tell you this participants that Lloyd is undergoing some upgrades. So the certificate for the 25th of September, 26th of September, and probably 28th of September might get some delayed. So please be patient and you'll receive the certificates shortly. For the attendance form, I request Anushka to please post the link in the chat box. We can, yeah, we can give 1 or 2 minutes for
Sure.